Welcome to another episode of Distory with Kate and Kirk. My name is Kirk from wallerscarve.com, and today we are going to talk about the Tower of Terror, but this time we finally moved out of the lobby and stepped into the library so that we can enjoy the pre-show. So the way that we're going to frame this up, because there's so much that happens in the two individual pre-show library rooms, is that we are going to focus on just the TV production and pre-show and the filming of that today. And then that'll set us up to be able to talk about the artifacts in those two individual rooms on subsequent episodes. So to discuss this pre-show with me, as always, is the amazing Disney historian herself, Kate, the Disney Cicerone. Kate, yo, what up?
Hey, so this is going to be a really fun episode because we have some incredible things that most people have not seen from the tower, including some original storyboards that are almost like the final, but not quite. So we get to kind of compare and contrast that. We also get to do a little bit of scavenger hunting for pieces in the lobby that ended up in the show. And so you'll have things to look for as you're watching the pre-show. If you've seen it a million times, you'll probably see it differently after this episode. So I'm very excited.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing, right? Is we want you to pay attention to the devil is in the details. And this is not wallpaper. We are going to actively take all the things that we've learned and seen from learning through the lobby, and we're going to apply them to the pre-show so that we can pick out some characteristics that we've seen or know some details about.
I like learning through the lobby. That's what we did for many episodes.
Learning through the lobby.
All right, let's get this started here. This is just a little shot of where we're headed into. We've talked about this before. There's two libraries. There's Foxtrot and Echo. And doesn't matter which one you're heading into, you're seeing the same pre-show. So you can see here that this is from the Imagineering storyboards for this attraction. This is showing that we are entering into scene 3, which they call the sitting room here. And so it says, a group of 34 guests per show cycle steps into one of the sitting rooms. A television set circa 1959 has been wedged into a bookcase among the dusty books and bric-a-brac. I love that word, bric-a-brac. I just really love it. Sorry, that's an aside. And then it says something really interesting at the bottom here, because it says its frayed cord dangles uselessly over the edge of the shelf, which I think was really interesting because I was like, there's no way that there's a frayed cord dangling in any of these rooms. So here's a picture of what this looked like. This was in 1994 when this attraction opened, and you can see the TV, but there is no frayed cord. So at some point they decided to do away with that idea. But the idea of the TV turning on by itself is actually a reference to season 2, episode 4 of the Twilight Zone, which is called A Thing About Machines. And you can actually see between these two pictures here, where they actually pulled the shape of the television from is from this episode. So the little gold part that is around the TV, the shape of it, which was fairly common for that time in the 1950s, I'll give you that. But it is very similar to the one that's in this episode. In the episode of A Thing About Machines, Bartlett Finchley is a snobby and technophobic food critic, and he becomes convinced that the machines in his home are rebelling against him. Okay? Like, this is like before we thought AI was going to like take over the world. He was like the original guy who was scared of technology. His typewriter, telephone, television, and even his electric razor began acting autonomously, all delivering the same chilling message. Get out of here, Finchley. As his paranoia escalates, he's ultimately driven to death by his own car, which is pretty grim. So it's a really iconic episode. If you haven't seen it, it has this razor that kind of like flies through the air and like chases him through his house, which is pretty interesting. But it also features a television in that turns on by itself, and he gets terrified by it, so he destroys the TV and then has to have a guy come in and repair it multiple times. And so I think that's where this comes from for the lobby.
I just like seeing that cord dangle with the razor in the air.
It's a fun effect. It's really neat.
It's very funny. You figure that cord probably had something like that was like, they probably gutted the cord and made that stiff so that they could, like a thick wire or something so that they could do that effect.
Yeah, like a little puppet,
right.
Make it run around.
Yeah, like a little.
Anyway, that's where the idea of this TV suddenly like popping on came from. So
Okay.
it's from the Twilight Zone. They threw in some lightning into the show to make it more dramatic, which we'll see more in the storyboards later on in this episode. But let's talk a little bit about the film itself and how it was produced and the story behind it and what went into producing it. We'll actually get into frame by frame the entire pre-show in case you haven't seen it later on in the episode. But for now, we're just going to talk about the production of it a little bit. So this pre-show film was a short film directed by Joe Dante, who is the director of Gremlins and It's a Good Life segment of the 1983 Twilight Zone, the movie. Basically what they did was they made a set to film the pre-show. And forgive these visuals if you're seeing this here. These are just screen grabs from another like production video of how Tower of Terror was made. And so it's a little bit fuzzy, but you can see some pretty interesting pictures of how it was made, including some of the camera work that they were doing and whatnot. But basically they made a set to film this pre-show, not in the attraction itself in Florida, but actually they built a set in California in Culver City. And they shot this July 13th to 16th, 1993. So show producer Lane Akiyama said of the pre-show set, the most exciting thing was being able to get a sneak preview of what the lobby was going to look like. What we noticed was being able to see the set full size and see it in reality with all the paint and the color and today's people walking through it, and then be able to see this set with all the lighting and characters walking through it and see it in black and white brought it to life and gave it its own history. Like it really was there since 1939. It's so funny because you think that this is the lobby that you're walking in Florida. It isn't actually. It's just as an entire set that they built just to film this in California.
When they were making this, they filmed this all on 35 millimeter, although a lot of things were filmed in Betamax. If you remember, us old heads, a lot of things were on the first like at-home videos were on Betamax, which were a cassette tape that was a little bit smaller, and then eventually VHS, and then it went to Laserdisc, and then it went to DVDs, Blu-ray, and now streaming. So, but this was filmed on 35 millimeter, and I took screen grabs from this to try to figure it out, and I think I have, with some deductive reasoning, I think I've landed on either a Panavision Panaflex Gold 2 or the Panaflex Platinum 35 millimeter. Particularly, there's a couple of images of it that look extended, and obviously, like the way you kit out, like as I know, working with cameras and film for making content creation, like you can make any camera look insane, like with the amount of gadgetry and things and items. And even it's funny seeing their monitors, because their monitors were these just gigantic, huge, like actual like TV monitors. Like it was like a big CRT monitor versus like now everything's like LCD, like flat panels and whatnot.
Right.
But then it made me think, okay, well, if this was just for fun and for posterity's sake, what would they have filmed this on if it was the 1930s and like they were actually filming it? And I found this Bell and Howell 2709 model that was really, really popular in particularly for Hollywood secondary shots. So there were lots of like news cameras that were very popular, but I'm taking a stab at if this was shot on black and white, what kind of camera would it be? And I think it would be a Bell and Howell because that was the most popular for Hollywood recordings of cinematic film.
It looks like it has Mickey ears on the top.
Yeah, there you go. That was purposeful.
Yeah. Well, because it has the film reels that goes from one to the other. So there's just big circles sitting on top of this camera.
Even the Panavision, it has the same exact style of like cassette taping in there as well. Or I don't know, what would you call it? Like film? In between because like a cassette contains both of them. But like I don't know, the reels, the individual reels. Yeah,
that's where we get the word reels for, Instagram, things like that. It's from old people technology. So that's where we get that word from.
You'll have to send me a bird, a tweet. Literally carrier pigeons. Exactly. I got you. I'm with you.
Well, that's interesting. Thanks, Kirk.
Yeah.
Investigation.
Little camera info.
I would like to talk just a little bit about the lost guests that we're seeing here, or the people that become lost, rather, in the lobby, and what's going on with these people and the styles behind them. we already talked about the fact that the bellman here, you might notice, is wearing this kind of like powder blue color instead of iconic red like they do today. All the bellhops are wearing, of course, red outfits. And the reason for that is because it doesn't read well. The red doesn't read well on black and white film, which is what they were doing. They're making this in black and white. So they didn't want to put them in red. They wanted to put them in something. If they put them in all white, it would read as white. If they were to put them in dark red, it would read as black. So they wanted it to be a different color. So they used blue instead of red for the bellhop. But there's also a celebrity couple, a little girl and her governess, the bellhop, plus a few extras, and also a toy poodle.
So if you notice also in the back, there is a woman in red who's holding a fixed tray that has kind of like a strap that's around her neck. And I had to look this up because I remember as a kid seeing this in like movies or even cartoons. You would see this characterized. And these would be cigarette girls. And cigarette girls start in the 1920s and they're popularized all the way through the 50s. Here's a picture of a cigarette girl selling, it was like candy, cigarettes, mints, like all those kind of things. They would walk around into these like big popular parties or movie theaters, those kinds of locations. Here's another one. This one is stateside, and you can see that she has also matches. And there is Camel cigarettes, and then in the dead center, or actually it's like center left, right next to the Camel, is Chesterfield. And I actually was able to find a Chesterfield cigarette with the cigarette girls, and they prominently put on the slogan, 3 of the country's smartest fashion models. Smartest fashion models. Susan Shaw, Florence Duran, Dana Dale, and they are the Chesterfield girls of the month. And these were the finest Turkish and domestic tobacco to make the Chesterfield cigarettes. And then finally, this gets idolized.
They're not that smart if they're smoking, just have to say.
If they were smart, they wouldn't start. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you. This whole cigarette girl kind of comes to a pinnacle point in 1947 where they actually idolized the romance of falling in love with a cigarette girl in the 1947 picture, Cigarette Girl.
I've never heard of that movie.
Well, who would? Who would? It's ridiculous.
Now I want to see that movie. We gotta go.
I know. It's. I feel like that guy's playing.
A little trumpet. Is it trombone?
Trombone.
Yeah.
A little slide reel.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, so that's who's in the background there.
I never noticed her in the pre-show. So like this is like one of those things where the color really helped her stand out. So while we're watching the making of film, her in that bright red made her stand out so much in like a sea of like very neutral colors.
Yes.
So I was like, oh my God, how did I ever not notice her? And you can see her in the pre-show when we roll by her.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
She's there. Some of the other guests that are in the lobby, let's chat about them for a bit. Besides this guy with the poodle, we've got some other guests just milling about in a typical garb. And it's interesting now, Kirk, looking at this lobby, having studied the lobby so intensely. And I'm like, oh yeah, that is not our lobby. This is whatever this is it. This is an imposter. Those lamps aren't right. They're not nothing is right in this lobby. But because it goes by so fast, you would not be able to pick that up at all.
I picked it up.
Well, we have the advantage, I think, of that.
I think, no, it's only because we've been a bunch of goons and stared at it for a ridiculously long time and have done so many episodes on here. But that's what I think makes this so cool, is that I think most people would have figured, oh, they just filmed it in the ride. But no, it's not in the queue itself. It's in that studio, and it is dramatically different. And we're going to play a game a little bit later of, can you spot the difference? But we'll play that a little bit later because we need to go through the entirety of the pre-show to be able to enjoy that game fully.
Yeah. So I have some really interesting concepts of, you see these guests are all dressed in these beautiful costumes from the 1930s. And so I actually have these concepts from Gary Danes, who made some ideas for what the kinds of things that they could be wearing. And they really read like fashion plates, of some of the fashion designer who's putting their outfits together. And so here's like a whole scene of the lobby that actually shows a woman with a poodle in this one, another woman with a little girl, bellhop that has a totally different outfit carrying suitcases, and then some men in suits and whatnot. But everybody's very, dapper, dressed up here in the lobby. And then here's a few more of them, more in evening wear than the previous one. Looks more like hotel guests that are checking in for their trip, and so they're more in like traveling clothes. But then there's some ones that are more
PJs, sweatpants, sweatshirts.
You're more like evening wear here. Yeah, sweatshirts. Can you imagine?
I love traveling in a sweatshirt. Those planes are cold, man.
I don't anymore. I used to, but I definitely I was just reading something, a little aside. I was just reading something about how because there's all this stuff happening with planes and planes having to get evacuated, and they're just make sure you're wearing closed-toed shoes and all of your skin is covered, so you have to slide down the slide. You don't get burned by the plastic. And I'm okay, yep, always gonna do that from now on. So anyway,
new fear unlocked for Kate.
I fly a lot, so I'm this is something I should probably pay attention to. Anyway, so there's also this evening wear here, which I think we should pull this back when we finally get to the end of the tower and we're looking in the gift shop windows, because they do have some actual dresses and stuff on display. And I wonder if they used some of these for inspiration for that. But there's a woman in a long black dress, and then there's a man in kind of a tuxedo with a white jacket and black pants. And another one that's in a really stylish, what do you call that? A 3-piece suit with an overcoat and a scarf. And he's dressed up. He's looking good. And then there's this woman who her proportions.
Both of their heads are terrible. What are you talking about?
I'm not saying their heads are good. I'm looking at their clothes.
Yo. Can we talk about their heads, though? Can you go back to the first lady? I'm sorry. Yes. I can't let this go. This is wild, dude. Her neck looks broken. It is shattered. It's she's, for those that can't see, she is tucked into the right and really into her shoulder, and it's turned at an awkward angle. Very strange.
I'm not convinced that Gary Danes was all that concerned about human proportion when he made these. I'll just say that.
I think the outfits are fantastic. Yeah. I think the heads are a big old mess. It actually, the one on the right-hand side looks like, that old woman or beautiful woman portrait? That's exactly what that looks like. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, it's a little bit weird. And I will
like
say
it. I like it. This is wild.
Well, look at this one with this lady in this purple dress, because whatever's going on with her torso on the right is so awkward because it's shifted over to the side.
Mm-hmm.
But she's in this kind of sparkly purple dress with almost a white scarf that drapes, goes over her shoulders and then drapes all the way down her back, and then a white feather boa. And then she's got, I'll tell you what, we're telling, don't smoke, kids. We're not condoning smoking, but there's a lot of smoking in these early concepts and early things from the 90s. They really incorporated smoking in general in this ride a lot more than what we see today, because you see her holding a cigarello, I think that's what it's called, which is a cigarette on the end of one of those sticks to hold it.
It's very Cruella de Vil animated version.
Yeah, but she's also doesn't have a nose much in this.
She looks like somebody hit her and flattened the left side of her face. I feel awful for her, this poor lady, because she's beautiful. Look at this beautiful gown she's got.
And then this guy's he's got a nice top hat and a little, I think it's a cane, and then more a tux with tails, which is fun. Elliot wore that for our wedding. He wanted to wear tails. That was his big thing for our wedding. So
okay.
What are you laughing at?
Shoes are so small. Why are his shoes like that? They're almost over his. I'll stop with the proportions, but that man's pants are Jenko jeans. I don't know what is happening. His feet are so tiny. He looks like the penguin.
He's like Sunny Eclipse.
A stiff. Oh my God, he has Sunny Eclipse feet. You nailed it. You just need to put him on a little space organ talking about space angels. I'm down, dude. I'm into what this guy's saying.
He looks like he could be in a circus, he's on stilts. I think that's the awkwardness here. His.
I don't know what frequency he gets paid, but I'm guessing it's pretty weekly.
Moving on from the concept art by Gary Danes of these guests in the lobby, I do have the official credit list and shooting schedule from the Walt Disney Imagineering archives. So the characters that we're seeing at play here, we have Raphael Gaiman, who's the dashing lover. Jessica Garris is the glamorous female. Parviz Peri Vasali, sorry if I'm butchering any of these names, is the bellhop. Mitchell Edmonds is the hotel manager. Robert Ryan is the Rod Serling lookalike who is scheduled for it, which I don't know if they ended up using that or not. So maybe at the end of the ride. Mark Silverman is the Rod Serling sound-alike, which we'll talk about later. He did voiceover work. And then Joe DeWinter was the safety spiel hostess who did voiceover work only. Charlotte Helms was the nanny. And then Lisa Ridgway was the little girl star, which is who we see in the lobby here. So I have a little bit more about the little girl star in particular, because you can see her in this filming thing. She's actually holding something in her hands. And this is something that a lot of people are like, it's the hidden Mickey to look for, because she's actually holding a Mickey doll in her hands. This is actually a really cute picture of her. To me, this looks like she's actually in the attraction. So I wonder if this is actually her visiting the Florida one. And because this doesn't look like the same thing from the shooting schedule now that I'm looking at it.
Yeah, that looks like after the fact, like she actually dressed up and visited the Florida one.
But anyway, here's a nice picture of her probably during filming and maybe backstage and holding this Mickey doll. So I would love to just go on a little rabbit trail here about the history of Mickey dolls and when they started in Disney history. So
are we going to go Scary to Mary? I feel like we are.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I love these like early productions of Mickey are so fun.
We're entering into spooky season, so I feel like this is very appropriate. So
I'm all ears.
The first Mickey doll ever created by Disney, and there's some ambiguousness about this, so just bear with me here. So Charlotte Clark in 1930 asked her then 16-year-old nephew and aspiring young artist Bob Clampett to come up with sketches of Mickey Mouse on which she could base her doll design. Not having any reference material handy, Bob grabbed his sketch pad and went to the Alexander Theater in Glendale, California to sketch Mickey in action from one of the Mickey Mouse cartoon shorts being screened there. Kirk is dying over here. So Charlotte and Bob created the first doll, and on the advice of Bob's father, sought the approval of Walt and Roy to produce and sell their Mickey Mouse doll creations. So not only were the Disney brothers pleased with Charlotte Clark's doll, they set it as the standard against which all subsequent Mickey Mouse dolls were soon to be measured. So what we're looking at here, and what Kirk is actually dying at, is a Mickey Mouse doll, but he's got teeth in it. He's got a big old grin with a lot of teeth, and he's cute and scary at the same time. I don't know else. How would you describe this, Kirk?
Like his feet crack me up because there's supposed to be those like yellow boots, but the way that they're kind of flattened out, they're more like like an oval, but like a Donald Duck like webbed foot. Yeah. The way that they're stitched, it's like two pieces of leather on top of each other, but the bottom has a different color. That's like more of like almost like a burnt sienna, and then the top is this bright Donald Duck yellow, and then his pants are gray with pink buttons, and then he's wearing a pink bow, like he's part of the like the pink ladies from Grease. I don't know what is going on. It's
I don't know
so
why
good.
He has a pink bow on here. I have no idea.
A clue, but he is ready.
As much as I could tell, these particular dolls we're looking at right now were not the ones that were produced by Charlotte Clark, just to be clear. These ones were made by Dean's Rag Book Company Limited, which is a company founded in 1903 in the UK, which was also licensed to make a soft toy of Mickey Mouse. So, and this is why I say it's a little bit ambiguous as to who actually made the first one, because this is actually based off of Steamboat Willie, which is why he looks black and white. He has these gray shorts going on, which tells me I feel like this one was actually earlier than Charlotte Clark, but I don't know if it was produced with permission or not.
I would make also the caveat is this is a manufacturer production one that actually was out being sold, where the Charlotte one initially was just probably a prototype. So like finding that versus what ends up being manufactured for the first one is probably a whole other thing as well.
Yeah. Well, it gets better. So
it's kind of weird though. Like Mickey has a couple of things, and he never has teeth
Never has.
And his gloves don't show up until a little bit after Steamboat Willie, because Steamboat Willie, he has all black hands, and they're mainly fists, like just circles for his hands.
They added the gloves later because they realized that in animation it was his hands would actually blend in with his like torso too much.
Oh, yeah,
when he was making gestures and stuff, if he crossed his hand over his body, his hand would disappear. So by having white gloves, it actually differentiated between his torso and his ears and whatnot and his hands. And so that's why they added the white gloves there, which also has a bit of a vaudeville connection as well, a minstrel connection, but that wasn't like the main intention to adding gloves, was to make it look that way. It was mostly to make his animation pop. So do you see the gloves on this one, Kirk?
Yeah, they're very oversized in a great way. Also, he has too many fingers, I think.
He had 5 fingers to begin with, and then they reduced it to 4 because it was less to animate. So Mickey actually did start with 5 fingers and then reduced it later on. So Timu Mickey in the chat's cracking me up here.
Sonny had 5 fingers, but he only used 3.
So this was one that was made by the Knickerbocker Toy Company, who obtained the license to make Mickey in 1934. And this is when Mickey gets a little bit more like rotund, I guess would be a good word for it.
Thick.
And
he looking thick.
But he has red shorts at this point with white buttons. I don't know what happened to his eyes here because he's missing the pupils of his eyes.
For those that are watching this, his eyes look completely white, but that's not actually how they would look.
No.
They would look more like Minnie adjacent to that, with that black button with the little tiny triangle wedge slit, which is very iconic of that animation period.
Yeah, Minnie has green heels on, which is...
She loved green corduroy. What can I say?
Like, I don't know.
It's got frill on the top, too. Like, almost like she's got, like, those, those ankle socks that had the lace around the edge.
Yeah, either that or it's the ties for the shoes. I'm not entirely sure. But she does have her bloomers on, which you know how I like bloomers. So
thank God she has that, man, because that skirt would be like up to her belly button.
Her skirt is definitely flying up.
It's way, she needs to pull that thing down.
Okay.
Mickey's about to bust out of his pants, though. Like, he's going to pop a button.
Okay,
that's what I looked like when I refused to believe that I was gaining weight and I still kept the same 34 size waist pants, and I was like, I'm not getting bigger fat pants. I'm not doing it. That was me.
Okay, so what happened was they needed more dolls in the 1930s, though. So Walt and Roy were dismayed at the quality and production rate of the dolls by Charlotte Clark and what they called the dollhouse team that was working in a small rented house that Walt set up near the studio. So they actually made their own dollhouse to have these dolls officially created. So they wanted to meet the demand for Mickey and Minnie dolls, and they wanted to keep the character design, but they had to adhere to the stipulations of their licensing agreement because at this point they're locked in with Charlotte Clark making all these dolls and whatnot. So they decided to take a different production path entirely. And this is where it gets really interesting, is that they actually made a partnership with the McCall Company of New York City. McCall, of course, is the ones that made patterns for clothing and stuffed animals and all those kinds of things. So they provided the opportunity for the public to construct their own dolls using this pattern, using the same design and method of the preferred doll creator, Charlotte Clark, and her dollhouse. So the same doll that was being produced in the dollhouse, which you can see here with, this one I think might be a little bit of a later one, but this is Walt covered in these kind of official Mickeys. You might have seen this official photo of Walt with a whole bunch of Mickey dolls around him. I'm pretty darn sure that this is the Charlotte Clark version of the dolls that then they made this pattern for people to produce. From 1932 to 1939, McCall printed pattern number 91, and it was available to the public. And it was a pattern for producing a pair of Mickey and Minnie Mouse dolls. The cost was 35 cents, and it came in one of 3 different sizes of dolls: small, which was 8.5 inches, medium, which was 13.5 inches, and large, which was 18 inches. The pattern envelope contained a tissue cutting pattern for the 27 pieces required to assemble one Mickey and one Minnie doll, complete sewing instructions, a hot iron transfers for stitching facial details, and a list of required materials and color suggestions for each element. So, but you could really like decide what fabric you wanted to make, like you would with any sort of sewing project, and make your own Mickey and Minnie and make them look however you wanted. So it's interesting to me that these dolls now we see that were created in this era. If you find one that's from the 1930s, it's possible that it was handmade from this pattern versus actually created or licensed by Disney. So you can see here, there's one of Mickey and Minnie where he's wearing like gingham shorts and she has a gingham skirt on. And this, I'm almost 100% sure, was homemade from this pattern.
That's very cool.
Isn't that interesting?
I feel like this is a good project for you, Kate.
I should make it find the pattern and make my own Mickey doll. That would be fun. I would love to do that. The pattern's probably really expensive. I wonder if there's a reproduction somewhere I could get.
That's what I'm saying. I bet somebody scanned their like McCall. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I should look it up. So what do we know about this doll that is in the Twilight Zone pre-show? And the one that the little girl is holding? Because I was like, okay, this is the 1930s. Which kind of version of the doll is she holding, right? So I started to look through a whole bunch of ones that were available in the 1930s. And it's interesting because it has solid black eyes and a white face, which means it was before Fred Moore's revolutionary changes to Mickey in Fantasia. So if you don't know, Freddie Moore was known as a Mickey Mouse expert. And when he did Mickey for Fantasia, the character model sheets, which you can see here, he actually changed Mickey's appearance in The Sorcerer's Apprentice. So the very iconic scene with Mickey with the hat and all of those kinds of things. And what he did was he added the white circles around Mickey's eyes. So we have like the black pupil and then we have Mickey's eyes. But if you look at these Mickeys from this era, you see that his eyes are all solid black without any like white around the black pupil. But he actually added that. And he also made his face flesh colored. So the Mickey that we kind of think of as like the iconic Mickey, that really is Fred Moore's Mickey that he designed for Fantasia that got pulled forward from that point forward, which I actually have a really fun kind of way of looking at it here in these like Mickey throughout the years doll set that you can see here. And you can watch it from Steamboat Willie and kind of how he evolved through time. And specifically right in the middle, there is Mickey. There's a Fantasia one. And you can see how his eyes changed and how his face became flesh colored from the one to the left in like Brave Little Tailor and so on and so forth. So I think it's like the one that's to the left of Brave Little Tailor in this set, I think is kind of the one that we're looking at. Which I lean towards might be closer to like almost like 1940s, but late 1939, it could have been, something that was just really late in that decade. But I couldn't find anything that looked specifically like this with that mouth that was kind of open. I was not able to find a doll from 1930s that looked like that. So I'm not really sure which version of the Mickey that is. The only other thing I have to say about this little girl, which she has a voice in the attraction when we get into like the Twilight Zone and whatnot, was another voiceover artist that we have that is actually called Little Girl Lost, which is voiced by Kat Cressida, who also is the voice of Constance Hatchaway in Walt Disney World's Haunted Mansion. Also used to be Disneyland's Haunted Mansion, but they did away with Constance Hatchaway. They gave her the axe. So anyway, that's pretty much what I've got about Mickey, the little Mickey. Thank you for going on that rabbit trail with me because I like looking at creepy old dolls. So
yeah, well, get ready and get excited because I found a McCall printed pattern with transfer size large for $6.49. They do reproductions of old timey patterns, so you can actually make your own 18-inch Mickey and Minnie if you want. Right. Look at him with the hat and the scarf.
Oh, I have to do that fancy. Now.
Isn't that fun? That would be a fun project. Yeah, just something like, take you a while, but you just pick it up when you need to do something.
I should document it and watch it, like making the official making.
You'll definitely make your $6.49 back.
If nothing else.
Plus, you'll have something that's fun and vintagey.
Yeah. Do you mind if we talk about Rod Serling in the pre-show movie a little bit?
I would love that. That's awesome.
Okay. You can't really have an episode of The Twilight Zone without having Rod Serling. We've talked about him previously and the history of the Twilight Zone, so I won't get into that too much. But he was the one who introduced every episode of the Twilight Zone. And, he'd usually it was so funny because every time I watch an episode of it, it's like he kind of like pops up somewhere or it pans to him or he's like in the scene, but the characters don't know he's there, which is always really funny. But they knew that they had to have him in it. So they started looking for a clip to use from the video. This is a quote from Michael Sprout, who said, "We spent more on that 88 seconds than was spent on an entire episode of the original show. Trying to fit Rod Serling in was one of the greatest challenges we had to face, but we knew we couldn't have an episode of The Twilight Zone without him. I ended up watching episodes of the show just to watch Rod. I thought we could really find the right moment when he wasn't referring to anything specific to that particular episode. He also had to be in front of a neutral background so we could just slop him in as part of our episode."
Slop him in.
Slop him in. So this is actually from It's a Good Life of the Twilight Zone, was an episode from 1961. And they took this clip of Rod Serling, they put him against a new background showing the maintenance service elevator. And so Rod Serling in this, he says, "This, as you might recognize, is a," and he turns and he points to it and he says, "map of the United States," instead of a maintenance service elevator is what we hear him say. So they just cut it right as he's turning to say map is when they cut it in the pre-show and says maintenance service elevator instead. So that's when we see Mark Silverman's voice start to fill in. And it's interesting because Rod Serling usually is smoking in the opening narration, because that's what you did back then. Again, kids, don't smoke. So people assumed that Disney removed the cigarette from his fingers, kind of like they would with Walt Disney, but that's actually not true. He happened to be not smoking in this episode, which worked really well for them in this particular clip. So they didn't have to remove anything. So there's no digital alteration of it. But it does cut to maintenance service elevator waiting for you. We invite you, if you dare, to step aboard. Because in tonight's episode, you are the star, and this episode travels directly to the Twilight Zone, which is all Mark Silverman's voice.
I just think it's crazy to look at him pointing there. They found the exact perfect moment to get him to be pointing off shooting to something, and then they just stuff the elevator behind. It's perfect.
I will also say that you found this colorized version, and what's interesting is they had color technology by the time they shot this show. My son complains that it's a boring show to watch because it's in black and white, which I can't even get into that argument about that. But but the fact is they shot the Twilight Zone purposefully in black and white because they had technology to shoot it in color, and they chose not to.
I mean, the texture of the show is completely different. I will say this, doing research for spooky season, I watched it was 19, oh God, I can't remember it was either in the 10s or the 20s, but it was really early, of Phantom of the Opera. And it's a silent film, so it's not a talkie. And it's interesting to see what actually is happening in that film in black and white. It's so hard to distinguish. I had to go back and look at synopsis of the film because at the very, very final eclipse, spoiler alert for the 1900s, but the mob overpowers the Phantom at the end and they beat him up and then they throw him in the river. But it's hard to see, but there's just people like this, pounding on this poor dude. And then it just cuts and there's a water splash. And you're like, dude, they are crazy on that hard quick cut, man. You missed the whole part of him flying in the air. It just went from literally punching, all these dudes punching him. And then you see him get lifted up and then there's a splash. And I was like, dang, dude, they missed the whole entire 40 frames in there.
Wow, that's crazy.
It's cool rewatching old movies like that because it's just such a different style because of the technology. Now, granted, they made a stylistic choice here with the Twilight Zone, but back then that was the best of the best,
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting. The whole series that it's shot in black and white it makes it have this whole different texture to it that it wouldn't if it was in color. Especially even just seeing the scene that you've pulled up here, seeing it in color makes it so much less spooky. It feels more like Walt in his office than, the Twilight Zone,
Right. He's talking about people disappearing in this small town in the episode. But your context is just, okay, I guess.
You're Sure. So you can see it side by side here. This is what it looks like in black and white on the left and color on the right. So
I would say, like I think about the Hitchcock films with Psycho and with the birds, like they were doing so much with so little, and so much of it gets lost because of the color, but also they could hide so much and get away with more because of the color. So I just think it's a very interesting, and I think, especially if they're saying that this pre-show costs more than an entire episode. So think about that in terms of costs. Like even manufacturing this would have been cheaper, like an actual Twilight Zone episode.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about Mark Silverman, who did the voiceover work for Rod Serling, because obviously he doesn't talk about the Twilight Zone, Tower of Terror, service, maintenance, elevator, all this kinds of things. Like that's not a thing. So this is Mark Silverman. A little bit about Mark. He loved voices so much that he liked to walk around recording the rides in Disneyland with a tape recorder. And then he would practice the voices from the rides. And I'm like, gosh, that is such that's my kind of person, right? It's like that's the level of nerddom that we appreciate here on Distory.
I like a long time ago, so I can totally parallel this. The very first episodes I ever released of like a Walrus Car podcast, and I've since abandoned this years ago. It was called Parkmosphere, and all it was me recording the rides and then putting them out as podcasts with like a little bit of an intro and a little bit of a close. But it was just so I could listen to the attractions when I wasn't in the parks. And it's funny, there's very few people who will go into the parks and just record a speaker, but I dig it.
Yeah. More shocking is that this is not your first podcast. Like, wait a minute. What? You didn't tell me this before.
Oh, yeah. I've had the Walrus Car podcast, like the Parkmosphere episodes get tons of listens to, because it's just where can you find that on Spotify or on iTunes? Like if you would have to pull up YouTube if you wanted to listen to Living with the Land, but instead you could just type in Living with the Land and I would be the only episode on the whole entire library.
Oh, it's interesting. Huh.
Yeah,
learn something new every day.
Mm-hmm.
Congrats on your first podcast.
Don't congratulate me. I abandoned that thing. That thing's gone.
Anyway, let's get back to Mark Silverman. So he'd walk around, record all these voices, and so then he would call Imagineering and ask to do the voices for them for the park, to no avail. They're like, thanks, but no thanks. But years later, he saw an audition for Rod Serling for a Disney ride, which he thought was confusing. Like, why Rod Serling in the Twilight Zone in a Disney park? Didn't make any sense. But Twilight Zone and Disney were his two biggest obsessions growing up, so they came together in this own little bizarre reality. So he read it in an agent's office in Beverly Hills, and 2 weeks later, the agent called and said he had a callback. He was excited to go to Imagineering, and it was down to 19 people, then 6 people, then one last audition. So you'll like this. He came in with fake bubblegum cigarettes to read for the park. So I think it's really fun. And then after that, he got the gig. He was the voice of Rod Serling. He went in to record a few months later, which took about an hour. And then a few months after that, he narrated a PR thing for the attraction. And someone said to him, "You sound better than you did the first time we recorded you. Can you please come back and do that again?" So he came back, but apparently he had a terrible cold. So they sent him home because he sounded so awful. And then 4 months after that, he came back, and that's the recording we hear today. But he said he also got in an elevator, just a regular elevator, a few years later. And after the doors closed, he said, "You are the passengers on a most uncommon elevator." People are probably looking at him. He said everybody laughed and applauded. Rod Serling's widow actually came to the opening of Twilight Zone, Tower of Terror, and said, "That sounds like my husband," which I can imagine is a wonderful thing to hear and to be able to do for her as well, to kind of hear her husband's voice again in that way. Mark Silverman was on the ride once, and the narration didn't happen after the drop for some reason, because the voice does come back at the end of the ride. And he thought, well, I'm here, I might as well just do it. And so he did the whole narration as the car was moving. And some people looked at him like it was odd, and some applauded, but he felt it was his duty to provide the voice since he was there. So he also has something that he shared on his Instagram page, which honestly, go give Mark Silverman a little follow on Instagram, because I feel like he's provides some really cool tower artifacts here. So this is a real page from the original script from 1993 that he posted. This is scene 10 from the epilogue. And so it shows Rod Serling, and then it says the exact same script we hear now. A warm welcome back to those of you who made it and all those kinds of things. And it also shows like the amount of time I think he was supposed to take to read it, which was 20 seconds because of probably the length of time it takes to travel in that particular part of the ride. It also says it's from 7/7/93 was when it was printed. But he's King Kong 1976 man on Instagram. Go give him a little bit of love there because he's posting some really cool Tower of Terror things. Thanks. Thank you so much, Mark Silverman, for providing the voice for Rod Serling, and we really appreciate you.
I love that.
Yeah, and I have a nice comment in our chat, too, from Aurora, who says he's so nice if you meet him in real life. He seems like a very genuine person. And so, yeah, and he actually posted like him saying the whole spiel from the Tower of Terror not very long ago. He's like, let me see if I can still do this, which was really fun to see. So we have something really exciting coming up next, which is like the original storyboard for Imagineering and kind of comparing that to what the pre-show is. But before we get to that, we have to take just a quick little break to talk about some of the things we have going on here as we head into spooky season. Kirk, what do you have going on over there at Walrus Carp?
I have a ton of new shirts that are coming out, and every single week we'll have new shirts come out for spooky season and whatnot. But I'm going to share a little bit of just like a little celebratory because I am like right on the cusp of a pretty numbers really don't matter anything in the social media world, but I am dastardly close to hitting 250,000 followers on TikTok. I know a number is just a number, but if you don't celebrate it yourself, who's going to celebrate it? So bell. I just think that's a cool milestone, and I'm pretty.
You need an upgrade for the bell. You need the original.
Thank you. Yeah. So it's I think I'll hit that today. So that's pretty cool.
That's exciting. Yeah, congratulations, Kirk. That's amazing. That's not a small thing.
I think it was my ET video of me making ET say the word Liz Anya with Mel that pushed me over the edge.
That was
a good
fun.
One.
Yeah, although I watched it. I will tell you, I watched it all the way through, even though I'm terrified of ET. So that's how much I thought it was great.
Yeah, it's just fun, man. Like I feel like sometimes with theme parks, people get so like there's supposed to be playgrounds for everybody, adults and kids, and as long as you're not disrespecting anybody and you're within the guidelines, like it's okay to let your hair down and have a good time and be silly and fun and lighthearted, and that's how I view all these things. And it's so great to appreciate the history and what we're doing for the Disney parks and whatnot. And I just think that it should be celebrated more. There's nothing wrong with loving and enjoying theme parks at any age, because they literally from Walt's mouth to our ears is that they're meant to be for everybody to play together. So it doesn't matter what age.
Yeah, I mean, I made a post not very long ago that was talking about how when he met Elie Wiesel at a film festival, and he actually asked Walt, who, if you don't know Elie Wiesel, he was a Holocaust survivor, and he asked Walt, what is your life purpose? And I don't remember off the top of my head the exact quote, but Walt essentially said that I can help people find their childhoods again, reconnect with their childhood and their inner child. That was his life purpose. That was why Disneyland exists. That's why he probably made the films that he did. He was such a big kid in a lot of ways. And I think it's because he didn't have much of a childhood himself. He worked a lot of his childhood, which we've talked about before on Distory. And so I think he really was, and of course he lived through, the Great Depression and, a couple world wars. And imagine what that entire generation went through, all of that. Having a place where they could go and just have fun and be kids, I think is so important. And our generation has their own stuff that they've been through as well. All of us have. So letting ourselves access that part of ourselves where we can be children, where we can be free and innocent and just have fun, I think is so critically important. And I'm sad for anybody who doesn't want to do that, quite honestly.
And if somebody gives you a hard time about it, just understand that they don't get it. And that's totally cool. They don't get it because there's things that they enjoy that you don't get. And that's awesome. Just do you, don't worry about it, and have some fun.
Right.
It's not that serious.
I agree 100%. And to that end, if you would like to escape mentally into the parks a little bit, I have, this is my book, What the Mansion Eyes See, which is the second book in the Pixie Dust in the Parks fiction series, which is set in the Disney parks. And I thought this one would be kind of a fun one to mention because we are entering into spooky season here. And this one does highlight the mansion quite a bit, specifically the Walt Disney World version. This one's mostly set in Walt Disney World, but it stars 2 Disney history live streamers who fall in love beneath the watchful eyes of the haunted mansion. But as their past begins to haunt their present, what they fear most might just follow them home. So you can get this on Amazon or Audible if you prefer to listen to it. But it is the middle book of a 3-book series featuring Disney history live streamers or cast members. And so just a little read for your fall there as we enter into spooky season. We ready to move on to the storyboard? This is exciting.
Yeah. Storyboard it up.
So
do it, lady.
Do it, lady. Let's head on into the storyboard. This is frame 6 here. It starts off with saying we already kind of entered the library, and now it says suddenly the windows darken, lightning strikes, and it says Zatz to illustrate the sound of the lightning happening. So what we see next is it says, frame 7 says thunder, lightning flashes through the sitting room window, the room lights flicker and go out, and the old TV comes to life. Static. So just like we said, suddenly the TV just kind of lights up, even though before in the storyboard, the cord was dangling or whatnot, even though you don't see one in this. There was no cord dangling in this picture, which is really funny. But the idea of this TV coming to life is what they're going for here. So now what we're actually seeing in the storyboard is the storyboarding of the pre-show itself. So it's going to take you frame by frame of what they call keyframes, which is the major points of action. And then that's an animation term because what they would do is they would create keyframes for this is we want this character to get from here, and then we want them to be doing this over here. And so this is the key frame, and this is another key frame, and then in between, you would have the in-betweeners that would animate everything in between, right? So how do they get from point A to point B? So these are the keyframes here for this pre-show. And this one here in frame 8 just shows kind of wavy lines on the TV. So what we're going to do here as we walked through this is I'm going to show you what the storyboard says, which differs slightly from the final version. And then Kirk is going to show you what the final version looks like, and we can talk about some of the differences as we go. This frame 8 shows kind of wavy lines on the TV. Kirk, what do you got over there?
I've got wavy lines on a TV.
Excellent. Okay. We have frame 9, which is you unlock this door with the key of imagination. Beyond it is another dimension, and we see a door flying through space.
And on the actual pre-show, we see the same exact thing. So we see stars in the background and almost identical to the storyboard style of framed out white planked wood door.
And then frame 10 is a window that's looking outside at a tree with stars in the background. It says a dimension of sound.
And we have the same exact thing in the actual pre-show. It is a window with multiple panes, 9 individual, and it goes out to a tree landscape.
I'm fairly sure this is actual footage from the Twilight Zone in this opening pre-show.
Yeah.
Because I don't think they manufactured this at all. Okay, so frame 11 is the eyeball with eyelashes and a lid that blinks, and then it says E equals MC squared.
Which we get them in separate moments, but we get the eyeball first, and then the E equals MC squared kind of fades in. Yeah. But we have the same.
And it says a dimension of sight also, I'll mention. Then frame 12, it shows E equals MC squared kind of exiting the scene. And then what is that? Oh, it's a person. It's a person flying in, this model of a person. It's flying in from the right-hand side, almost upside down. And it says, a dimension of mind. You're moving into a land of both shadow and substance.
And in this, what that actually is, it's one of those posable dolls. Fun fact, this is just a random aside. If you go onto the Carousel of Progress in the Magic Kingdom, they have one of these exact wooden figurine posable dolls, and it's in the very last scene on the upper right above the wife, her desktop, and every single day the cast members will change how the doll is positioned.
Oh, that's neat. I love that. Mm-hmm.
but it's the same exact type one. I believe they have one that's similar to in the Remy queue. I just can't remember for sure offhand, but I think so.
Okay.
But it's the same as the storyboard.
Interesting. So frame 13 has a clock, the like infamous kind of like Twilight Zone-y clock with a pendulum on the left, and then it has the person flying by, and then it says of things and ideas you've just crossed over.
Which at this point, our figure has already left the frame for the most part. As the clock is coming in, they're like barely almost intersecting as figure goes out, clock goes to central focal point. There's a big difference though here is that we get the hands of the clock and we also get the numbers of the clock, and it's less of a grandfather clock. It's more of like a pocket watch style.
Yeah.
And there is no swinging pendulum with a face, which is in the storyboard, but is not reflective here.
I don't know if it has a face, but at the bottom it does. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, I think, what we see later in the fifth dimension scene.
Technically all clocks have a face. You know what I'm talking about. Isn't that a riddle? Like what has two hands, a face, but isn't alive or something? Isn't that a thing?
Yeah.
I feel like that's a riddle.
Like what was black and white and red all over?
A newspaper.
Embarrassed penguin.
No, yeah. Come on, dude. Do they blush? I don't think they do.
Well, it's interesting, though, because they put the clock with the pendulum, which I think really is a tie into the later part of this attraction. But that's not what they ended up putting in the pre-show.
Yeah, it's not here at all.
No. And then it goes, frame 14 is the Twilight Zone, and it says into the Twilight Zone. And they said the Twilight Zone, but I think they pulled this from the show. And of course, it just says Twilight Zone.
Zone.
Not the Twilight Zone.
Goodbye article.
So then we go to this shot of the exterior in frame 15, which is the exterior, the Hollywood Tower Hotel, 1939 night. The tower is undamaged. Thunder, lightning, rain. So it's showing the exterior of the tower with a whole bunch of like sideways rain coming down.
Big old fat rain on my side too. And it is the tower exterior in that same exact thunderstorm. One thing though that is absent, that is notable in the storyboard, is the sign for the Hollywood Tower Hotel. We do get some of like the fencing structure, but it kind of blends out with the like shrubbery on the bottom, but we don't in the bottom right hand side have the big Hollywood Tower Hotel sign.
Oh yeah, that's right.
It's completely missing.
I see what you mean. Yeah. It basically was zoomed in a little bit more than this one is, because it's you don't see the front gate. This one has the front gate. And that's what Kirk's referring to, is not the one that's on the building itself, but the sign, the marquee that's at the front gate is not here in the pre-show.
The storyboard doesn't look like it has the sign that's on the tower itself.
You're right. I think that there's a reason for that. So I want to just mention with the exterior here. This is actually from our friend Joshua, who's a Disney historian who's been helping us with this series. He's been collaborating and really helping give us a lot of resources. He's also the creator of E82 Project at epcotlegacy.com in case you want to go support his work as a historian. But he said that this establishing shot of the tower that we see is based on the earlier Chateau Marmont iteration, which we've talked about before, of the building. And it's very close to the 1992 Tom Gillian painting. So you can see maybe that's why it doesn't have the marquee on it. There is one in this particular one, but he also says it also determined later that the Tom Gillian painting was also a rough composition of what was supposed to be the attraction poster, which was in turn based on this 1992 Coulter Winn architectural study, which has the 1917 date on it, I think is what he said. Hold on, let me find it. So this is the like turned into the attraction poster, and then this is the architectural study. If that keyframe is based on this, it would make sense that this view has the front signs in it, right? It has the gate and the marquee. And so and so does this art here. And then, so I think he's right that this particular keyframe is probably from those two pieces of concept art.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So let's keep rolling. So this is where we have a little bit of a diversion from the storyboards to the actual film. So in frame 16, it says interior, hotel lobby, night, close up, front desk bell. And it shows a picture of the bell with the like mailboxes behind it.
Yeah, in ours, we're getting that owl statuette, that bronze in the center, but you can see the check-in desk and the mail slots in this establishing frame, but we're super zoomed in on a macro and they are out of focus in the background.
Yeah.
But we don't see that bell right out the gate. And in fact, you don't even see it in the next part.
No, it's like the next frame is actually frame 17 is a hand comes into the frame and slaps the bell. Kind of like that.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have that at all. Like if it does happen, it's so in the background, you don't see it at all.
Yeah, we go right into the hustle and bustle of everybody that's there, but they start with lightning flashing and that owl. That's the start versus the bell.
Right. The next frame says begin pullback, and it shows still kind of tight on the bell, but with the hand next to it. And then it says hotel manager, which is a voiceover. It says bellman, room 1213, please.
Yeah, you don't have any dialogue of that at all. In fact, we don't get any dialogue from the characters in this scene except for the girl singing. That was it.
Yeah.
But that's later on.
Then frame 19, it says pullback reveals a busy hotel lobby, 1939. The sound of the storm continues. A few fancy dressed Hollywood types enter, shaking the rain off of their evening clothes. And so you definitely see a guy with maybe an umbrella. I don't know why he would do this, though. If it's an umbrella, he tucked it under his arm. I was like, who puts a wet umbrella under their arm ever? Like,
that's why the bellman looks like,
he's like horrified. He's like, what are you doing?
We have umbrella stands, sir.
But you do see a bellman like kind of overladen with luggage. And what do you got on your side, Kirk?
We do. Yeah. So ours, we don't have anybody necessarily with an umbrella. You do see people filing into the lobby area, and you 100% get a bellman who is overburdened with luggage. He's carrying 4 different articles of luggage and has no help in sight.
Then in scene 20, it says the camera pans, following another group of hotel guests being led to the elevator by a bellman carrying their luggage.
So it's the bellman, the couple, and another group in front of them. For us, as we round the corner, you see the couple, you see the bellman, but there is no other group in front of them. There's one person it's like a female who is off to the left, and then suddenly out of nowhere, the governess and the child show up.
Yeah. And we do have a voiceover here for Rod Serling, and it says Hollywood, 1939. I have the actual script pulled up here just so we can compare, and it does say Hollywood, 1939. So that didn't change at all. Then the next frame is frame 21. It says, amidst the glitz and the glitter of a bustling young movie town at the height of its golden age. And then we see the people kind of going by the bellman's stand and walking into the elevator.
Okay. And for ours, you do see people going in. However, that stand is only in the shot directly before that. It's off to the right, and then they completely quick cut away, and it's off camera to the right. And we only see the governess and the little girl, the bellman, and then the couple walking in that exact order into the elevator. You can see some things off to the left-hand side, like you can see the directory, you can see the elevator buttons, as well as the ashtray stand.
I mean, it's interesting though that's like, it looks so different now looking at it than what we actually have. So
like, yeah, like there's no, and I'm sure probably when they were looking at it, they want to make sure that you know that all these people are entering the elevator, and that stand probably was obscuring and being too artistic of a viewpoint. You got to remember, like, pre-shows are short, so we want to establish what's happening and who are these main characters. In fact, you even get like a little bit and piece that isn't mentioned here, because remember, like, there's no governess in the storyboard with the little girl, so we're getting a textural piece of how she's managing this child. Because at first I thought it was like a grandmother, but instead she's this governess. Which, can I put a pause and talk about a governess for just 1 second?
Go for it.
Yes. Okay. So I needed to know what a governess was, and the world's most famous governess happened to be Marion Crawford, and Marion Crawford was the governess for the royal household. So she was in England. In this picture, you can see on the left-hand side, Princess Elizabeth, Princess Margaret, Lady Helen Graham, and Miss Marion Crawford. This was in 1939. Now, why is this woman so famous? Well, she's famous because of who she cared after. Obviously, Queen Elizabeth, everyone's very familiar with. But what happened was she basically gets ousted from the royal family because she gets paid. And this is like in 1947, she got paid by the American Home Journal to be the first person to talk about stories anonymously for journalistic pieces, and they paid her $85,000 back in 1947, but she spilled the tea on like interrelationships and things that were going on in the royal family. This was a big to do, and so she gets completely fired, and it's because of her. You're not allowed to talk about them, and she thought she was going to be completely anonymous in the stories that they told, but they literally pinned it on her name in print. So as a result, she's been the most famous governess, but for all the wrong reasons.
Infamous governess.
Yeah.
I have a question in our chat. Does a governess have to be for royalty only? And no, like wealthy people can have governesses.
Governess is mainly a caretaker, but also a tutor. So somebody that is like educating the youth. But typically a governess is, you got money, dude, you know, otherwise you got a sitter, bro, you know. But if you can afford a nanny, you know, plenty of people. Another name would be like a nanny,
right?
If you got a nanny, you'd be living large.
I feel like the more modern name is a nanny, and governess is kind of what they used to use for back when there was finishing schools and whatnot.
Yes, exactly. I think governess, you know, stems from that because only like upper echelon or wealth, or in this case, royal, would have a nanny.
Yeah. And in the case of the Twilight Zone itself, the little girl and the nanny would be more like Hollywood starlet situation where it's like, you know, they're wealthy, a wealthy family or wealthy.
Which, by the way, dude, that lady just yanks that kid's arm, man. She is not a nice... It's like bothersome. Like if that's her parents, I don't know if they are. That could be the assumption, I guess. But let's say that's the parents and the governess is with the kid. Dude, horrible. I'd be like, yo, bro, can you calm it down a little bit? Yeah, I get it's 1939, but let's like exercise some chill.
It doesn't seem like that they're the parents, which I always assumed they were. But
yeah, they seem very dismissive of the child. Like whatever's happening is not important to them.
Well, the Imagineering Archives record of it says the dashing lover and the glamorous female. It doesn't say mom and dad or anything like that. So,
well, why can't a mom and dad be a dashing lover and a glamorous female, Kate? I don't think that's fair. I mean,
not discriminating. I'm just saying.
Us parents can be dashing and glamorous.
Frame 22, we've got more Rod Serling voiceover, and they're walking now into the elevator, and Kirk is right. There is no little girl in the storyboard at all. So that's a significant departure here. There's just another couple getting in with this other couple. So there's two couples in a bellhop. And it says the Hollywood Tower Hotel was a star in its own right, a beacon for the show business elite. Something is about to happen that will change all that. And that is the exact same script that we have today. Frame 23, they're all in the elevator and they're facing you, and the bellman is putting down the suitcases on the floor. And it says, thunder, the hotel guests and bellmen step into the elevator and turn and face forward. But that's a little different for you, Kirk, right?
Yeah, he's still holding the bags. So when they turn around, the governess and the child are there. But it looks like the couple is staring at the bellman, and the bellman's looking at them. So no, those three people are not facing forward. They're facing each other, and only the governess is facing forward, and the child was just yanked back because it almost looked like they were going to try to roll out the doors while they were closing.
Yeah. It seems like to me, the bellman is taking the luggage for the couple, and then the governess and the nanny, the governess and the child are just like getting in the elevator to go back upstairs.
Or maybe the parents think of their kid as an accessory and they don't really love her, and they've pawned it all off on the governess, and it's really an awful marriage, and they actually married only for opulence and wealth, and they didn't really truly enjoy their marriage and their coupling, and honestly they were getting a divorce, but they didn't have time for that because they got electrocuted and sent to the Twilight Zone.
Kirk has written an entire extra adventure for us.
I just was saying maybe. It's not true, but maybe.
Some fan fiction from Kirk. Anyway, moving on. We see in frame 24, the elevator doors close. So it shows arrows with the doors closing. And then we have the floor indicator arrow begins to move in frame 25 as the elevator is ascending. So it shows you that the elevator is moving up.
We're seeing the exact same thing here.
And then we actually pop to in frame 26, we pop to the exterior of the Hollywood Tower Hotel, 1939 night. The storm continues.
And at this point, we actually get to see the electricity hit the tower itself.
Right. So there's a few frames of this here. It says frame 27, there's a resounding clap of thunder. A dazzling bolt of lightning strikes the tower of the hotel.
That was my thunder.
It's kind of weak, not going to lie.
Well, it just said one clap. It didn't say like a...
Applause of thunder.
It said a lot. Got it.
And then we have frame 28, a net of this is actually interesting. In frame 28, it says a net of electrical energy spreads across a large section of the hotel and tower. That section warps, ripples, and becomes transparent.
Oh, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Hang on. Let's see if anything becomes transparent. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Look, it like vanishes. That front section vanishes, which... To your point earlier in this series, you said that front spot gets transported to the Twilight Zone. Like you hit the nail on the head. That's why that is completely blown off and gone from the tower exterior.
Exactly. And it's interesting to me that they call it a net of electrical energy. So it's like it's trying to explain what's happening to it. Because here we're just like, okay, something's happening. Obviously, there's electricity moving around it, but I love the way that they described it here. And then
reminds me of the Ghostbusters, how when they shoot out their blasters, it like captures the ghost in like a net of electricity. Like it looks very similar visually.
Yeah. And then in frame 29, it shows interior of the hotel elevator, night. The passengers within the elevator are wrapped in the same fiery net of energy.
They look shocked.
Shocking. And then you can see them. It says in frame 30, they react in terror as they too begin to disappear.
Yeah, well, I guess they're up on current events. Yeah, you don't really see their terror at all. They're more transparent.
They look like
right before they vanish.
Like what's going on. It's less terror, more like what's happening.
Well, I mean, could you imagine you're getting hit with lightning? You don't even know.
I don't know what it feels like to get hit by lightning. So I guess this is
a good point. This is where we learn about Kate. Did you ever electrocute yourself by accident when you were a kid or anything?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, it's the worst feeling in the world, that jolt. That happened to me several times with like, the worst one was I had a vacuum as one of my chores, and the vacuum, you know how like the vacuum like outlet, or not the outlet, the plug will get like all crooked and annoying because, you know, the cords were never long enough. So like you go around the edge of the sofa and then you yank it and it rip out of the wall.
Yeah.
Well, I had one of those scenarios where the plug was all, you know, looked like a C, and I had to like wedge it in. And when I did that, my finger on the bottom connected both the prongs as it went in.
Oh no.
Oh boy, dude. I felt like I was in the Green Mile for a hot second.
Yeah, I had it when there was a horse pasture that was across from our house when I was growing up, and it had an electric fence. And so I remember one time specifically we were like sneaking into the horse pasture and we didn't think about the electric fence. I don't know why. We thought that was not a big deal. We for sure touched it, and it was the most uncomfortable feeling ever. And I will never want to do that again. So yeah. Back to the Twilight Zone. Next one is frame 31, and pretty much all we do is see them kind of like elongating as these kind of like phantoms with electricity around them and then disappearing.
I don't think we change shape at all. They undulate like they're like something's happening to them, but there's no like visual effect that's like stretching them or thinning them out like you would envision in the storyboard.
Yeah, I think you're right. Then they actually not only get stretched out, but in frame 32, they actually grow smaller, like they're blinking out of existence. So
one side will make you grow smaller.
And then in frame 33, they actually turn into like little stars that are like literally blinking out of existence. So all of the people are represented by a little star.
See, they would become starlets. Do we turn into stars? We get static above the hotel or above the elevators, like vents. It looks like the static from the TV. That's like the closest thing we have to stars. And then we move into the next scene. So there's no them vanishing into stars. No.
So then in frame 34, we do the exterior of the Hollywood Tower Hotel, 1939 night. It says the elevator car is a bright, shimmering light falling from the top of the tower as the tower itself flickers in and out of existence. The guests in the elevator scream, it vanishes.
We do see this exact scene. This looks pretty close.
And then it goes to a close-up of the elevator floor indicator in frame 35, and the arrow registers off the scale beyond the 12th floor. Oh, interesting.
Yes, that's getting us to the 13th floor.
You know what, Kirk? I've always wondered why. I was like, obviously it doesn't indicate the 13th floor on here. And I was like, it just goes to 12. That's kind of dumb that the thing goes to 12. It's actually beyond the 13th, beyond the 12th into the 13th.
Mm-hmm.
That's so interesting.
This is the Twilight Zone, Kate. Anything can happen.
So there's also a Rod Serling voiceover that starts here, and it says, "The time is now, this moment." This is where the script for the storyboard starts to depart from what we hear, because it starts saying, "The time is now on an evening very much like the one we have just witnessed," is what we're used to hearing. You'll see in frame 36, it says, "Pullback reveals the elevator doors knocked off their tracks. An out of order sign hangs on the doors." And so we see the indicator at the top, and then we see some crooked doors.
Which for us, we also see those crooked doors and an out of order sign on the left-hand side, while there's still flashing lightning in the foreground.
Right. And then, but the narration's different, and that's the key, is the narration is changed here. So then we see in frame 37, we still see the elevator with the doors knocked off, and specifically the out of order sign, like Kirk is showing you here. And Rod Serling voiceover says, "It was on just such a night when the elevator climbed the tower for the last time and carried its last load of passengers into ... In the actual one, it will say, "Tonight's story on the Twilight Zone is somewhat unique." So it actually like goes into Rod Serling instead of like this part here. So this part's a departure. So I'm going to show you what we got here. So now frame 38, it does a swish pan. Do you want to show your swish pan? Because you got one of those too, which means it's
swish pan.
Over to Rod Serling. So in the storyboard in frame 39, it says, "What into what? Another time, another world, another dimension? If we could go back to the lost evening in this forgotten place, if we could make that same journey today, what would we discover? There is only one way, ... I'm like, this is completely different than what we have now, Kirk. Right?
Big difference.
Because this is when it says, "Tonight's story on the Twilight Zone is somewhat unique and calls for a different kind of introduction." And this is when we have that part. It was like, this is, you may know, this is, you may recognize, is a maintenance service elevator still in operation. So on frame 40, the voiceover we just left off, and it said there's only one way. And then it does basically a close-up view of the service elevator. And it says, a Rod Serling voiceover of, "In the basement of this hotel, there is a long forgotten service elevator, rusted, frozen in time," which is not what they say in the script, because he says, "This is a maintenance service elevator still in operation, waiting for you." So they changed the story from it being it rusted and frozen in time elevator to one that's still working. Hop on in.
It's totally fine, bro. And if you look at it, it looks polished in the pre-show.
Yeah, really different. So then in frame 41, this is not something you'll probably find, Kirk, because it has, it says waiting, and it shows the service elevator. And it actually goes in this, you can see some of the maintenance equipment on the left-hand side, like the wheels and whatnot for the elevator. And this scene is not in the pre-show at all. And it says, "Until now." It shows kind of a close-up of the mechanism for the elevator. So frame 42 says there is another lightning strike on screen, and in the sitting room window, the elevator machinery suddenly creaks and groans back to life. So the lightning that we see that flashes in the window would actually make the elevator come back to life.
Oh, okay.
Isn't that interesting? So
it's electric.
It's electric.
Boogie, woogie, woogie.
But if you go back a little bit, Kirk, you'll see that in frame 43, this is kind of where we get back on track with what we actually did end up getting, because that shows an elevator with the doors opening and the light coming through it. And it says, very slowly, the elevator doors begin to open. The interior of the elevator is suffused with a brilliant light.
We definitely have that.
Yeah. And then the next one in frame 44, it says, we invite you, if you dare, to step aboard this elevator. So the actual script now says, we invite you, if you dare, to step aboard, because in tonight's episode, you are the star. But it shows just the doors opening more towards the light. Then this says in frame 45, it says, tilt up past the floor indicator. So you're raising up into, I think you have that one too.
We do.
Yeah.
We do. Yeah. Although it transitions pretty quickly to the exterior. So like you'll see it starts to dissolve as we're panning up.
Which we have right here. So this is frame 45A. You can see that cross dissolve from the service elevator into the exterior of the tower. And then in frame 46, it says continue tilt up exterior of the tower. And the Rod Serling voiceover says, in tonight's episode, you are the star, and this elevator is about to take you directly to the floor marked terror, which is pretty much what we have over there too. So,
Does the storyboard show the tower? See, the towers are missing on yours, but on this one, they're like translucent, like almost like they've come back for you to just visit the vanished moment in time.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah,
they're like, what I'm saying?
They're like ghostly.
They're ghostly. They're not fully intact. They're more ghostly in shape and look, versus like on the storyboard, they're just gone.
Yeah, frame 47 shows just nothing there, like an open hallway to where you would just, if you stepped out, you would fall. That's really interesting. Then frame 48 says lightning strikes the tower. The missing portions of the hotel waver into view momentarily. So maybe that's what this is indicating.
Maybe that's what that is. Right,
yeah.
right.
And then it's just moving up in view. And then it says, this voiceover says, located somewhere between this hotel basement, which the same thing happens over there, right? We just move up into the sky. But there's less stars for you currently.
It's cloudy.
Does it dissolve into stars as we go?
No.
Oh, interesting.
No, it just shuts off. TV just closes. No stars.
So then it says frame 50 is and the Twilight Zone. So the whole line is located somewhere between this hotel basement and the Twilight Zone. And it shows just stars. And then in frame 51, it says lightning flashes in the window once again. And then 52 is the television set snaps off. So there's a lot more lightning in this version than there was
lightning
there.
And stars. And we just get rain and wind and palm trees. And then it rolls right to the TV shutting off.
Really interesting. And beyond that, then it says the lights in the sitting room come back on is the next frame. So
there you go.
Which the room does illuminate there. And that's that pre-show with the storyboard there. So really interesting differences there, Kirk, between the two, you know?
Yeah, totally.
I do have just something I want to share before we get to your really fun game that you've made up of Spot the Differences.
Please do.
I can't wait for that. But I do have a first pass treatment of the script from Imagineering from 1990. So this was like their first foray into doing it. I think this is from Kevin Rafferty. And it's convoluted. If you want to say like word salad, this is kind of what this version is of it, and it feels very much in the creative process as a first draft. And so I just wanted to share this because I thought it was really interesting. But it says, witness, if you will, a Hollywood Tower hotel that stretches up toward the vastness of space, through the void that is the sky, beyond the limits of your imagination. For the tower is host to a most uncommon pair of service elevators, just as the hotel is host to a most uncommon pair of residents. Science fiction and the fantasy of terror. It has been said that science fiction is the improbable made possible and fantasy is the impossible made probable. If you should dare check into this hotel, you may find yourself impossibly lost within the hidden corridors of the improbable, lost inside a dimension between light and shadow, between science and the supernatural, between the pit of man's fears and the summit of his knowledge. But don't worry, there is an escape. That's just his first pass treatment, which you can see where they pulled pieces out of that, but they're like, we got to make this simpler. This is too much.
I think their script is really perfect the way it is now.
Yeah. And they definitely took a lot of cues from the Twilight Zone. Like, Twilight Zone was known for having these kind of like really poetic little tiny monologues about what it is, the moral of the story or whatever, near the end. And so I love that they tried to capture the spirit of that and really try to make it as succinct as possible. I think they did a pretty good job with that.
Yeah, I agree.
That being said, Kirk, it's all you. Let's play your game. I'm ready.
It's time to play Spot the Difference. This is Tower of Terror pre-show versus actual lobby. So what I've done is I've just hand selected a couple of images from both the pre-show, either the making of or the actual pre-show, and then some of our photos that we've seen in the past. So Kate, join along. Chat, join along. If you can spot any differences, don't worry. This is not graded. It doesn't go against your Distorian report card.
Oh, good.
You're perfectly fine. So the first set of images, and the way this will always work is the actual lobby will always be at the top, and the bottom will either be of the studio or of the pre-show itself. So the first images that we're looking at right now are the fireplace. So what do you notice, Kate? Is there anything?
Yeah, the lamp for sure is different.
Oh my gosh, the lamps were glaringly different. Not even close to the fringed, really ornate lamps. And we know they were super costly too, so that makes sense.
Yeah, the Cloisonné lamps. We don't have that here. We have more of a basic one. It does have still like a fringed lamp, but it's more of like just like plain white lampshade.
Yeah. The top is more angular, where the other one had more of that oval and like more Asian theme style versus the one that we have here.
Yeah.
The other thing I noticed is the candlesticks. So the candelabra that's in the back is like big, fat, chunky candles. Like think like squatty, wider diameter.
Yeah.
And the one that we actually get is very thin. And more ornate too, the way it looks, but then very thin candles that are longer.
Yeah. Aurora in our chat points out that the wall aging is completely different. Like the wall actually looks aged in ours, which would make sense storytelling wise because the hotel hasn't aged yet in the film. That's still now 1939.
They did do a nice job with the Solomon columns and the face on the fireplace. Although you notice that there are logs in the fireplace here, but there is no wrought iron, grate in the front of the fireplace. That's completely missing.
Right.
Couches are similar, but obviously couldn't be the same. But close enough, I think.
The couches are really different. They've got more of like the solid wooden handle versus kind of the overstuffed version that we have now. Yeah.
But there is a wood backboard to them and wooden legs. So I feel like, there's, if you're going to give them something, you can give them some credit there. So, okay.
The banner is a little bit different too. That's
yeah. If you look at the, the fringe is a lot shorter in the studio version. It's a lot longer in the actual. And then even the crest itself, which I purposely cropped it so you couldn't see the full entire HTH. But on the studio one, we never see it. We never actually see the banner to be able to note if it looks like what you were talking about earlier with the Quetzalcoatl.
Oh, yeah. So, interesting.
Yeah. All right. Moving on. We have the check-in desk area. What are some glaring differences you notice?
Well, we do have the potted palms, so those look pretty similar.
Potted palms, just different where they place them.
Yeah.
Because they kind of are more bookends in the actual, but in this one, it's like there's one right in the front where like it's to the left of the guest books. There are lamps on both ones, but the lamps look slightly different. There is a guest book in both. They also, I think, nailed the door that leaves the check-in, and they also nailed the mail slots. And even the chair in the corner is a decent representation.
Yeah, but the desk itself, like the wood looks so much less ornate to me.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But you know what's funny is I feel like the door is pretty similar.
Yeah, it
But
is.
that's probably like a prefab door that they found versus like the desk was different,
right.
you know?
And they probably shipped the door, over to Florida after filming because so much of the set just got boxed up and shipped over. Interesting.
Okay. Moving on. We've got our owl, which I thought was uncanny. I thought they did a great job. This is probably the exact same one or replicas because, again, you see this quite a bit. Now, in the previous shot, I think they matched the clock, too. I think the clock is pretty accurate to what the clock is shown in terms of like its shape and structure.
I think that's
pretty
one.
Solid.
Yeah.
I did this one just for you.
I love it.
I think these are the same.
Yeah. So I think
it's a griffin sconce.
Griffin sconce. Yeah. They took the sconces from that Fox Theater that was defunct in Seattle and they used them for the tower. So I have a feeling that they just took them and they put them in the set. Yeah. And then they moved them
It's
to
super
Florida.
blurry and fuzzy in the pre-show version. But once I saw that, I was like, I have to show this to Kate because she'll think this is fun.
I love that.
Because not everything matches correctly. All right. Here's that clock again. I think the clock is identical. I also think the guest check-in sign is identical. The thing I had trouble with is the shape of the lamps are similar. I don't remember though. Later on, I'm going to show a picture where it says HTH on it. I can't remember if these lamps are adorned with the initials or not. So
I mean,
I have
they
to look
are
back
in
at
the hotel, like in the current version, if that's what you're asking. But I don't know.
But I don't know if they
pre-show.
look the same as the way they do in the pre-show or not. Because
I don't know.
In the making of, it shows that. Now this is interesting. We have a directory, but the directories look very different. We also have a push button, and the push button in the real versus the studio has two. It has an up and down, but because we're on the ground floor and they're not going to the basement. There's only an up because most of the time, like your ground floor, unless there are basement levels, like there's like an underground garage or something like that. Most of the time, L is for lobby, and there's only one button at the lobby or the ground floor, and you press up because that's the only way you're going. On this one, there's two buttons, and it's less ornate, and it's more just rectangular, like simple off the shelf kind of push buttons. Although I do think that the ashtrays are the same.
Yeah, I think that was
they
just
look
moved
identical.
Over. Yeah, I agree.
So, and then here's that HTH. Again, I have to look to see if it matches, but I think they're very similar. I also think the mail slots might be the same. And then there's that guest sign, which I think is identical.
Yeah, I think they took the entire structure of the mail slots and just shipped it over because even the top of it looked the same in the other picture.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I'm with you. And then I just like looking at this shot for shot because I think it looks cool.
So Rod Serling pointing at the map versus the elevator.
The elevator where they slopped him in.
Slopped him in.
Greatest phrase ever. And then this one, dude, this is goofy, but do you remember these cups?
Yes. Especially the one on the left.
When I was doing my research and I was looking at the making of, I noticed in the background, I was like, oh my God, I remember drinking out of those cups at my dad's dealership when I was a kid. So the left and the right were made by the Sweetheart wax coated paper cups. The Sweetheart company is going to go defunct. They get purchased in the 90s by Solo Cup. So Red Solo Cup, the Solo Cup company is actually going to purchase these, but in 75 is when the yellow and orange flower pattern comes out. So that's actually what's sitting on the table in front of the show director for Tower of Terror in the background. So they were probably drinking coffee or water out of that style cup. And then the one on the left is more iconic, especially if you grew up in the 90s, because that was the jazz pattern, which was super, super nostalgic. Like most people remember that one, but these were disposable wax coated paper cups. And it was just something funny I saw in the background. It reminded me of my youth.
Yeah. The one that has like the teal slashes with the purple slashes over it.
Yeah.
Like, oh gosh, I remember those everywhere.
Yeah. The jazz style pattern was crazy, crazy popular in the 90s, where predating it, which is kind of funny because this was filmed in the 90s, but they had the 1975 style cup still, obviously. So they must have bought these orange and yellow flower pattern ones and had tons of them out there in Hollywood.
That's crazy.
Weird, random, I just saw I had to talk about.
I love it.
And that's it. That's all I got.
That's great. Oh my gosh. What a fun journey this has been. I really think that the differences of the storyboards and some of those things in the storyboards that explain what we're seeing, this like net of energy and all of that. And the idea that the lightning was supposed to kick on the elevator that hadn't been used. Like that's a cool story thing. And seeing the differences between the pre-show, what we actually got and the storyboards. I think that's such a fascinating, who knew there was so much in this pre-show to look at. And we could have gone deeper on the pre-show if we really wanted to, because we didn't even talk about the alligator bags that we had talked about previously. Also, that's what the bellman is holding, is those alligator bags that Kirk taught us about how to make on a previous episode. So
if you haven't watched how to debone an alligator, please. It's very fascinating.
That was a fun one. So I think that that's as far as we're going to go with the pre-show, just because we have to call it at some point. And that's kind of setting us up too for as we start to step into these libraries and talk more of the details of what we're seeing in the artifacts that are kind of lining the sides and the ceilings of the libraries, which quite honestly is a monumental task for us to take at Distory, especially for the level of detail that we like to go into. So Kirk and I are going to moderate ourselves and our time and your time, and we are going to try to identify as much as we can, but the level of detail we go into it about each object, we're going to hold ourselves back just a little bit, just for sake of time. So our plan is to have 4 episodes on the libraries, 2 in each one, and we'll get to as much as we get to in each episode. But we're excited to step into them because there's a lot of cool stuff in there.
Yeah, dude, it's like a dang shenanigans in there. You go in there, there's just like literally trinkets all over the wall of everything. So like we're gonna highlight some things, and I think that's the best way to do it. Otherwise, this series will last probably another 20 episodes just because of if we wanted to be completionists.
Yeah. And I have had a lot of people asking us in our comments for the show, are we going to tackle DCA, Disneyland Paris, all the versions?
Yes.
We can't not do those. And they are different. And we're still trying to figure out exactly how we're going to do that. And they're like, but are you going to do it to this level of detail? I was like, well, that's what we do here.
Yeah. Here's the thing that I'll remind those that remember our Big Thunder Haunted Mansion series, is that a lot of times things layer on top of one another until there's a divergent, right? So like we ended up spending more time in Paris because there's such a divergence. I think you're going to see us layering for DCA, layering in Paris off of previously learned knowledge, but then Tokyo is where we just throw a curveball and we just go.
Yeah, we have to just
completely
start
different.
Over. Yeah.
Yep.
But yes, we are going to go to those versions. I know there's a lot of people that really miss the one that's in California. So I think that'll be a fun, nostalgic ride for those of us who don't get to go it anymore. And I think that we will mention a few things in the California series about Guardians of the Galaxy, but we're not going to do a deep dive into that because it's not really much of history at this point. It's so new. So it's not really something we're talking about.
If it's new, we don't want it. It needs to be at least more than a decade old.
It's true. But we can, of course, talk about some things that they kept around, in that series. But anyway, we are going to dive in next time into some of the artifacts in the library. So I'm very much looking forward to that. Kirk, do you have any final thoughts here as we wrap up?
The word of the day is bric-a-brac.
Oh, yes, such a good word. And get your Mickey patterns and make yourself your own Mickey doll. It's only like $7. You can do it. Well, thank you everybody for joining us for this episode of Distory. We hope you enjoyed digging deep into the pre-show and finding exactly creatively how all of that was put together. We appreciate you guys so much, and we'll see you for another episode of Distory.